Welcome back to another episode of Wicked Darkness. I'm Kathy, your host, and with me I have my fellow stupid investigators, Rich and Leah.
Howdy.
Tonight, guys, we are going to be talking about Herman Webster Mudgett,
Who?
more notably known as H.H. Holmes.
Man.
Yeah. Mr. Holmes. He's an interesting fellow.
He's a creepy person.
Yeah. So H.H. Holmes,
Yes.
I always wondered what the H.H. was. I'm like, what does that even stand for? I found out today. Did you guys know what it is?
His name?
Yeah. With the H, has the H period Holmes.
Henry Howard.
Yes. Henry Howard Holmes. I never knew that until today.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess unless you were looking for it, you probably wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known it either unless I was looking for it.
I knew it wasn't his real name, so I was just like, oh, the man just must have just put, the three letters together and at the end just put a Ohms on the back of it, trying to throw people off. But he actually made a whole name out of the whole thing. So, and it's Dr.
Yeah.
Dr. Henry Howard Holmes. So,
He did go to medical school, so I kind of don't blame him.
Yeah, he did. He did. So, Mr. Herman, Henry, Howard, whatever you want to call him, because he kind of got rid of the Mudgett name and altogether that whole, birth name. He was born in May of 1861 on the 16th of May, and he was born in New Hampshire. And he was born into a very Methodist family. Mother and father, they had deep religion beliefs, and they tried to do that with him, and it didn't stick. And he is the middle of 5 kids. So, but the other thing I didn't know is he was cross-eyed.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I was listening to another podcast, and they mentioned it. They said that he never looked people in the eye, and that
That's because he's a con artist.
Being a con artist, but mainly because he was cross-eyed. So he got bullied when he was a kid, and with the bullying, these teenage boys scared the bejeebers out of him. They ended up taken to a doctor's office, and it was like a chemistry office, like chemistry stuff all over the place. And they had built up this anxiety in him, and they dragged him into this doctor's office one day, and they had staged this whole thing where he walked in, and there was a skeleton, anatomical skeleton, head to toe, with his arms reached out. And he had said in his memoirs that thing scared him for so long because of its grin. Now it's skeleton, so it's always grinning. They always seem to be smiling at somebody, showing their teeth. But it scared him so much, but it also intrigued him. And that is what made him want to know a little bit more about the body. So that was another thing that I didn't know. I mean, you watch the documentaries and stuff like that, and you learn some of the history of him, but you don't really hear a lot of when he was younger and what created his interest in, he was very interested in the body and how it worked, how it functioned. He was a smart kid. I mean, he graduated when he was 16.
Yeah, that's what they say. He was very smart.
Yeah. And then he went right into being a teacher. But it's not.
But he even went to college right after he finished high school at 16 and then left that first college because he wasn't impressed with their curriculum. Wow.
Like he ended up getting a tutor for chemistry because he didn't like his chemistry teacher, how they were not really teaching very well. So it wasn't up to his standards, that he went and physically rented a person to teach him how to do chemistry. And so he's a smart guy. But then he ended up getting married at the age of 18. To a Clara Lovering. I'm gonna like slaughter her name. They got married in 1878. So you were saying that he went to college. He went to the University of Vermont from 1879 to 1880. And then he left there because he wasn't very interested.
Yep.
And he ended up going to the University of Michigan.
Yep.
From 1882 to 1884.
Yep.
And he went there for medicine. But he tried going to med school before and kind of dropped out because he ran out of money. So he couldn't go. So he's trying to figure out ways to make money. Well, when him and Clara were together, he wasn't that impressed with her because it seemed like, let me back up a little bit. Him and Clara got married and then they had a son. Once she had the baby, Robert was his name, Herman wasn't interested in her anymore. He felt like they were like slowing his game down.
Which they were.
Like any family, you start young and you think your life is going a certain way, and then all of a sudden you now are a family and your priorities have to change. And he didn't like that. And so he kind of ditched her.
Yeah, but at what point did all of this start where he's starting his con to feed his desire for money and, things like that. And that's kind of where the necessity of the killings kind of started, I think. Is wasn't because he wanted to, it's because he had to keep the charade going of whatever he was involved in at the time. So, I mean, he said he kind of got tired of her or, felt they were slowing him down. Maybe at that point he was already thinking far enough ahead, which I think we can all agree, as we said, he was very smart. So he's very manipulative and he's thinking ahead and,
When he started the cons in college.
Right.
So, I mean, these were...
Well, he started actually younger than that. He started when he was a little kid. He would steal from people and he would make them believe that it happened. Certain things happened for whatever reason. And he would make them believe his story. So, I mean, he started young as a con artist. And it's like he kind of was trying to make his niche in the world and figure out what's the next step to be better and get more money in, and who's going to believe his next story, and how can he just keep improving them. And I found it interesting. There was an article that I found that they were describing serial killers, because H.H. Holmes is known as a serial killer in today's age. But I find it funny that there was a Adam Selzer who was writing a book about Holmes, and he describes a serial killer. Just killing several people isn't necessarily enough for most definition of a serial killer. More often, it has to be a series of similar crimes committed over a period of time, usually more to satisfy a psychological urge on the killer's part than any other particular motive. And the murderers, we can connect him as in Holmes, to generally had a clear motive. Someone knew too much or was getting in his way, or they couldn't be trusted. And the murderer wasn't simply for love of bloodshed, but a necessary part of furthering his swindling operations and protecting his lifestyle. So he's not the typical serial killer. It's not, he didn't get a thrill out of it. I mean, I'm sure he did get a little bit of a thrill, because there was one point where he was when he was courting his wife, I'll say first wife, and there was a gentleman that started to flirt with her at some party, and he had pulled him aside. He saw it and said something to the guy in his ear, and the guy turned white, and he left, never saw him again. And then the next day, that's when they got engaged. He got a little thrill out of whatever he had said to this guy. And then they got engaged. And then they got married, had their son. And then it was, oh, you're dragging me down, honey. Right. I got to get out of here. So she ended up raising their son. And he just went on with life. He had stayed married to her, which I thought was interesting. He tried to get a divorce, but he also was trying to swindle that too. He's just a con artist altogether. I mean, he was trying to say that she was cheating on him, and that he was raising their son, not her. Well, how do you raise your kid when you don't have your kid with you?
Right.
But it was all for him to not have to pay for child support. But all the stuff like didn't add up to whoever it was that was getting his documentation. And she never even really knew that he was trying to file for divorce. She just didn't know. And all the other times he was moving on for another marriage and another swindle. And he got married quite a lot. But it seemed like he would have a child with them, and then he would leave them. And then, he would change his name. He was all about aliases and stuff.
Yeah, he had a long list of aliases.
He did.
I mean, if you really want to dig deep on this guy, I mean, there's no telling where the swindling or the murders or anything even go. I mean, you could spend a lifetime trying to track it and trace it, and just it's just mind-boggling. When I saw one of the lists they showed of all his aliases, I mean,
how do you keep all this straight?
And back then, you didn't have a passport. They didn't keep track of that like they do nowadays. So, right. I mean, he could every day he could say he's somebody else, or whenever he's traveling, he's a different person. I mean, so trying to figure out the long line of how deep this goes is probably, no one's ever going to figure it out. Right. Not anymore, I don't think. But I mean, it's interesting to sit and talk about it and try to figure it out on your own. But
well, he was only convicted of one murder.
Yeah.
And
he confessed to others, and then some of those people were alive.
Right. It was like what, 25?
Yeah. So it's just more. How much of it is the facade and him telling a story of something, and it's not even really true. I mean,
right.
Keep everybody guessing,
Well, the one that he was convicted of, that was his partner. And that was another swindle.
Yep.
He's doing another con artist kind of game. And this one was for insurance fraud.
Yep. And
so he ended up getting his buddy, who had a wife and family, talked him into moving out to Pennsylvania and opening up a patent store, put out a sign and everything. And then he was going to, because of his medical background, he knew that, because he had done his research when it came to insurance payouts. So he knew that they investigated a lot. And so he knew that he would, if he was going to do this, he was going to have to do it right. So his buddy and him hatched the plan that he was going to move out to Pennsylvania with his 14-year-old daughter so that she could identify the body. But what was going to happen was they were going to, Mudge at the time said he was going to find a body, a cadaver, and put that into the place of his partner. And he would make it where it looks similar to him, but he couldn't really identify the person. And the daughter, would be the one that would be able to identify certain markings and stuff like that they would know about. And then they would get the $10,000 payout. And it worked. And the reason that he was going to do that was to get the money. But then the partner was supposed to come back to his wife and children and live a normal life, but under a different alias. Perry was supposed to be the alias. And his wife did not approve of this, but somehow Holmes or Mudge talked her and him into it. And she kept asking him, where is he? Where is he? When is he coming home? And he went missing. Mr. Perry went missing. And then he just kept making up these stories. And then, where's the girl? She didn't come back either. And it just kept building and building and building. And then he would just disappear and wouldn't talk to these people ever again and go to a different town and change his name and then start a whole new life. So, but he got caught because of this one, because of the circumstances and all the evidence that they were able to find on him, but not soon enough. And so with that, he ended up moving to a different town. Same thing happens. Finds another woman, marries her illegally. Can never get it a legal marriage, even though she thinks it's legal. He knows it's not, because it's another con artist kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward, he moves to Chicago. And we all know in Chicago, that's where he became super famous to the world.
Yeah.
And when he moved there, he ended up buying a drugstore. He worked there first.
Yep.
And then he ended up buying it and used that as the storefront for his castle.
Yep.
So, this is kind of like your guy.
My guy.
Your guy. What am I missing in this story?
Well, he did the partner after the Chicago. He was in Chicago first, and he's actually done a lot of this. I think the insurance stuff, from what I've read up on him, all that insurance stuff almost started when he was in college, because he was stealing cadavers from his college, turning them, like burning them and dismembering them and putting them in positions where he would state that he found so-and-so in this unrecognizable state and started doing insurance scams from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think really that's his biggest reason for his moves, because he'd get in all these like insurance scams, and to not catch them or to not find them, he'd have to run to the next spot. Then when he does go to Chicago, he gets that pharmacy, or becomes like a pharmacy tech. And there's like the two elderly people that own it. One of them had cancer, so to say, because there's another source that says that he never did have cancer. So I'm not sure on that one, because there's sources that says that this man had cancer and was terminal, and the wife was elderly and she could no longer take care of the store. And then there will be another source that say actually they both outlived him. So I'm not sure which one is true. But so the story says he ended up scamming his way into buying out them, and he owned this property now. Then bought the property across the street and started building his hotel, and was actually building it like piece by piece, where he would have a storefront on the first floor, but then the next floors up would be like this winding, weird torture place, I guess you want to call it, where there was like hallways that didn't make sense, staircases that led to nowhere, peepholes,
trapdoors,
places where the trapdoors. And he would do it in such a way that the construction crews could never really figure out what he was doing, because he wouldn't keep them hired long enough. He would keep firing them or not paying them, and then hire another crew. So it was like nobody really knew what he was trying to build there.
Think about that for a minute, and what goes through his mind, that he's able to think that through to the point where, well, if I do it this way, it's going to take people longer to catch on, and no one's going to realize what the ultimate plan was. You know, like you said, he would get rid of a construction crew and bring another one in, because then if anybody was ever questioned, no one's going to know anything. And I mean, not to the full extent, but just for him to be thinking that way, I mean, that's just, I mean, he's smart. Well, you got to admire him. You got to admire him a little bit. I mean, for all the thought process and everything that he thought out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He thought it through pretty good. I mean,
well, none of it was in his name either. He had it in his second wife's mother's name. So whenever he didn't pay any of the bills, he's like, well, it's not mine. It's hers. Nothing is in my name. And you know, he had like 50 lawsuits against him, but they couldn't pin anything because he didn't own anything. Right. So he was smart enough to do that too. And then whatever he had that technically they could take back, he had already sold or, you know, gave it away or whatever. And they still had nothing to take from him. Mm-hmm. And then there's the story of he had a safe that he built the room around the safe, and the people came to repossess the safe, and he's like, fine, you can come in and get it, but you can't damage any of the property around it. If you do, I'm going to sue you. So they went in and they looked and they're like, there's no way that we're going to get this thing out of here without taking down some walls. So they had to leave it, and they never got their money from him. But again, it wasn't in his name. And then, you know, really, who are they going to go after anyway? Because it's not even his name. They don't know what his actual name is. So who's going to sue? So he was very smart. And then I find it funny, there's like the people that work there that they knew about some of these places, these little nooks and crannies that nobody should know about, and they'd go and take naps. Like, oh, this looks funny. Let's go down this hallway that shouldn't even be here. It's like a secret trap door. And we go in here. Oh, nobody will know. I'm going to go take a nap. But then, you know, like I said, he couldn't really keep anybody there either. But nobody questioned, like, he put in all these different things. Like he had this elaborate thing going on where he could have pipes going into rooms and turn the gas on and, you know, asphyxiate these people that were staying there. And nobody questioned, like, hey, why are you putting a pipe there?
Right.
Like, this is a light fixture, but it's got this gas pipe coming through.
Exactly.
This is kind of odd. But he also did it during the World's Fair in Chicago.
Yeah, he had it built by 1891, and World's Fair started just a few years later. Mm-hmm. And there was talks about how he would rent out rooms to females, but not like off the street, can't afford anything females, like affluent females and those that have money. And females that worked for him ended up trapped in some of these rooms. Mm-hmm. And I find it very interesting because I get maybe selling the organs or the skeletons, but they found skeletal remains in this place, including that of children. So the question is, was he really doing it for money, or is there a pleasure of killing? Did it start becoming pleasurable?
Right. Well, there's a part where he had a cadaver of a baby, an infant, found underneath the bed. what are you doing with that in your bedroom? You're that obsessed with the anatomy that you want to steal the cadaver from wherever. And this wasn't even like when he was in Chicago, but this was just in general. Like he was still in school, I believe, at this time, because he had a roommate, and they found this cadaver, and the roommate and him didn't get along because the roommate's like, you're just kind of an odd duck, you know. And it was like vinegar and water. Or oil and water. They just didn't match personalities and stuff. And he just saw that this guy has this fascination for oddities that he shouldn't have fascinations with. But then, like you said, when he was in Chicago, when it came to the castle, he knew these people. He made a point to know everybody, know at least a little bit about them. It wasn't where he was taking complete strangers off the street.
Right.
And, you know, he even had a mistress that the husband, I could be wrong on this, there was two different ways of the story. One was that the husband was really old, and then the other one was the husband wasn't as old, like around the same age as the woman or something. But in either case, her and Holmes ended up starting a relationship together, and flirting and everything else. And they had stayed at the castle at some point. And so then, I believe she turned into one of his first victims, quote unquote, where, and I know I have her name somewhere here. It was like she got pregnant, and she ended up having an abortion.
Her name is Julia.
Yes. And so Julia and Pearl was her daughter. And they disappeared on Christmas Eve. And he said that she was pregnant, and that she ended up having an abortion, and it went wrong. And it sounded like he tried doing it and botched it at some point. There's like the story of him doing it. But she went missing. Her daughter went missing. Like everybody that knew him kind of goes missing. Except for Clara. She didn't go missing. She just moved away. And
I was gonna say, Marta, the second wife, and then his third wife, Georgina.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like they went missing. It just sounds like he up and leaves them, because he was technically married to 3 different women at the time of his execution. So I don't know, maybe get close enough to marry him and you'll survive. I don't know.
Right. Well, they said that he's like charming.
Sure.
But how charming can you actually be?
Apparently pretty charming.
Right.
with everything he got away with.
Exactly.
At a certain point.
Right. Charming, Mr. Charming. He's been around, just, you know, it's hard to say what to believe and what not to believe with H.H. Holmes. You know, it's one of those, like, they talk about the murder castle, as it's been known to be called now. And the claims were the structure contained secret torture chambers, trap doors, gas chamber, a basement crematorium. But none of these claims were true, they said. Then they said that the account claims that the hotel was made up. But then they said in reality, the hotel floor was moderately sized and largely unremarkable. It did contain some hidden rooms, but they were hiding away furniture that he had bought on credit but didn't pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Charm.
Maybe that's true.
Yeah.
Maybe he was hiding furniture and dead bodies.
Right.
Maybe both accounts are true. And it's sad because it burnt down. So
right. And then they tore it down.
Mm-hmm.
What was left of it. And I know now in the spot that is a post office.
Yeah.
And I know I watched an episode about it, and the lady who worked at the post office said, yes, there's like this doorway to what was at one time a tunnel system underneath the hotel, and always creeped everybody out. But that's the only thing that's left is that tunnel system. And I wish they wouldn't have tore everything down. I know it was a fire and everything, but curiosity, what was actually.
Well, there was a basement there, and man, I bet if you dug underneath there, what you would find, because back in the day when he thought he was getting rid of evidence, I don't think he got rid of everything he thinks he did.
Right.
I mean, so just imagine everything that's still buried underneath the ground there by that post office.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot now.
Think of like the possible energy and things happening.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to investigate that, just saying.
Do they have paranormal things happening at that post office?
They do. They have claims of paranormal activity at the post office. What exactly, I don't know, but I know that she had said that they do have claims of it. And I think they don't want to really go into specifics because it's the U.S. Post Office. They don't want people tromping around, and trying to stir something up that they already are trying to wipe away. They don't want H.H. Holmes attached to it or anything. But it seems like as much as he is a con artist, and a charmer, anytime that something was going to be pinned on him, he seems to be picking up his stuff and moving on. Mm-hmm. Like there's accounts of him having contact with like a young boy. The boy went missing, and all of a sudden he skips town himself.
Yep.
Says he doesn't know anything about it. Girls go missing, like his partner and the wife and the kids, they end up going missing. I don't know anything about it. And then he skips town again.
Yeah.
Which you've been watching, and I haven't seen it in a long time, but you were watching the documentary with his great-grandson.
Great-grandson.
Yeah.
Yeah. An attorney.
I haven't gotten all the way through it yet, which is fine, but I'm far enough into it that
and he goes by Mudgett.
Yes.
Yeah.
His great-great-grandson.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very interesting facts that they're able to come up with, and just the timeline.
You didn't finish it, right? So
I didn't finish it yet, so I don't know any of the details.
Spoil.
Yeah, don't spoil it for me. I've already formed my own opinion, and I
But I think in the documentary, he traveled around the country.
There, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it lines up. I mean, he's here, then he's there. They have pretty much. I mean, looking at the manifest on the ships and stuff, it clearly looks like he was there, and coming back, and the time frames of when he was there and when he left, and when things started and when they stopped. I mean, just in. The thing that got me, which obviously it's a TV show, so I don't know how much of it's, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But I thought it was really interesting when they did the sketch using the witness accounts and the face that they come up with as opposed to Holmes. I mean,
so what we're talking about in this documentary, this part of the documentary, do you remember the name of it? I don't remember the name of it offhand.
American Ripper, Jack Ripper.
There you go. Yes,
like
that was it. So we're talking about the point where H.H. Holmes leaves the United States just around the same time period that Jack the Ripper comes into play. H.H. Holmes leaves the United States and heads over to Europe, specifically London. And he's there during the time period that Jack the Ripper has gone and went on a killing spree with the women in
There was 5, right?
Yeah, 5 prostitutes, ladies of the night.
Right.
But the way that they did, that they were killed, they say the theory is that whoever did it had medical training. Well, who else has medical training?
Well,
H.H. Holmes.
That's the first part of it. But then when they dig into it and some of the stuff comes out that they're pretty much sure it was American.
Yeah.
That did it, only because of the letters that were left that they do have from Jack the Ripper. And, they went through and they, deciphered all that stuff. And like I said, it's a TV show. So how much of it is real as opposed to just embellishing anything, I don't know.
Right.
Whatever. But either way, it's very interesting the way that the show portrays it and comes up with the things, and everything seems to lead down that same path.
Right. And this is supposed to be his great-great-grandson who travels around the country to different locations that H.H. Holmes, but also Herman Mudgett has gone to throughout, like, from the time that he started with Robert's mother, and where he started as a child, like he went back to the home and all that stuff of the family home, the farm, and he goes from place to place through the timelines. And then he actually goes over to London and he sees the letters, because they still have the letters in the Scotland Yard has the letters still. Or am I wrong on that one?
Someone has them over there. Yes, they were looking off of copies.
Okay.
But yeah, they said the originals are wherever, because they really wanted to get their hands on the original, but obviously that wasn't going to happen.
Right. So, because it's still an unsolved mystery. They don't know exactly who Jack the Ripper actually is.
What's the greatest part about it? It's unsolved. So I mean, you can come up with any theory you want.
Right.
It
could be male, it could be female. They don't know who Jack the Ripper actually is.
When they took they had 13 eyewitness accounts, which they say is unheard of in any type of crime, to actually have 13 people have a description of the perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
And when they back then, all they had was simple person that could sketch out a rough picture of what the person is. They don't have the forensics and the computers and everything we do now. So with the path on this documentary that they go down, as I was saying before, it's very interesting that they come up, they feed in all the eyewitness descriptions, and I'm not going to ruin it for anybody. Go watch it, but it's interesting when they come up with the picture of what these eyewitnesses back in the day specifically described this person looking like, and being entered into a computer sketch program or whatever with the person. It's very interesting. Mm-hmm. I mean, that alone would be something that would make you question it. But when you start following the rest of the series, as far as I got so far, there's so many things that cross and line up. I think there's too many things there, in my personal opinion. Obviously, it's my opinion that, I think it was the same person.
Right.
No,
and I agree.
I didn't finish watching it, so maybe something at the end they say, nope, could have never happened, whatever. But as where I'm sitting right now, where I'm at in that story, I'm a believer just by,
it seems like there's too many coincidences to say, no, it's not. But again,
especially since they don't know.
Right. They don't know. And this is his great grandson, and he doesn't even know. He's trying to find out his family's history. And he found out that he's related to him, and he just wants to know about, who wants to find out that your great great grandfather is a serial killer. I mean, that's not something that the family would be oh yeah, that's Yeah, it's a great time in our family history. We love talking about that. But to know where your family comes from, I mean, doing DNA testing and stuff like that, you're curious. But unfortunately, this guy found out that he is related to H.H. Holmes, and he wants to know more about the history. Did he, in fact, kill all these people? Did he not kill all these people? What are the truths? But unfortunately, Mudgett, he is just a liar from day one. He just lies. So you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. He's made up this kind of lore that you don't know if he's telling the truth or not, even if it's staring you right in the face. Like, he could be holding the knife or whatever with the blood dripping off of it, but you're not sure. Did he really kill the person? Because he just charms his way into people's lives and talks them into something completely different. He always comes up with a reason why he is found in a certain situation, doing a certain thing. But he seems to stay in the dark, in the corners. Like, he doesn't really stand out, but yet he does stand out. And people still kept coming to this hotel. Nobody said, oh, hey, I saw this person walk into the hotel, but I didn't see him walk back out.
Right. I think you're just in a time period back then when it's just the way things were. It's not like things are now.
He was smart enough to do it, though, when Chicago was hosting, all these countries, and hundreds of thousands of people are walking the streets of downtown Chicago. I mean, yes, we have a lot of people in Chicago nowadays as is, but you're talking about the World's Fair where, this was the fair that they had learned about electricity and lights. And, everybody is in awe of this. All of a sudden, you now flip a switch and you now have light. I've been to a World's Fair before, and it does captivate you that you forget everything else around. I went to the one in Tennessee, and when you walk in, you see all these things that are in the future and stuff like that. You forget what's around the rest of the city and what's going on. You're just in awe of what's here on these fairgrounds. And I think he knew that was going to happen to these people because of what was happening. He's been in Chicago building up to this as the World's Fair is being built around him. He's blocks away from it.
Mm-hmm.
He knew all these people were going to need a place to stay. So nobody's going to question if somebody goes missing because you have so many people that don't belong in the city.
And he likely didn't kill everybody that went there.
No.
So you did have people walk out just fine.
Right.
It was selected individuals, ladies usually.
Mm-hmm. Well, and on top of that, he was smart enough to have the drugstore as a storefront too. So, and they've had it where there is one kid that got medicine from the drugstore, and Holmes is adamant that he didn't do anything to the medication, but the kid died. He's like, I didn't do it. I did not do anything to this child. I don't know what happened. He took the medication and then he passed away. So, that one there, he wasn't taking the rap for that one. He's just like, no, it was not me. I didn't do it. But there are others that he had done, and they opened them up just to see that the smell of chloroform was in their system. I don't know how much, I don't know how it even works that way, but they opened the body up and the smell of chloroform came out of this body. That was one of the stories. I don't know how that's even possible, but unless he put it down the person's throat, I don't think he would do that.
And that's why, in all these stories, that's why I don't know if I necessarily believe that he was Jack the Ripper. I feel like I'm still struggling on this theory. There's so many coincidences. At the same time, what happened in London does not match really at all with the stuff he was doing in America. So, and with the knowledge of serial killers, you kill the same. It's like
Right.
the pattern stays the same. And his pattern in London didn't make any sense if it was really him. I like the theory. I can understand the theory, but I'm not convinced yet.
I just find it funny that the timeline is the same.
Sure.
That's just very coincidental, and that's not facts, it's coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But, to be the American Jack the Ripper, basically, and then in London, the American one stops and the London one starts. And then the London one stops and the American one starts.
But then the question is, did the American ones actually stop, or do we just not know about them?
Well, that's the thing, because he was only convicted for the one murder, but
his partner,
but he on death row right before they hung him, he said he killed 25, but then there are rumors that it was just the 9, which would be his partner, the partner's wife and children, the
3 of the children.
Yeah, the 3 children, the mistress. So that we're up to what, 5 now? 6. And then there's 3 other more people out there that ended up going missing. Did he kill them? I don't know. But then, like you said before, Rich, that he would say he killed these people and then they'd find these people alive.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the truth? What's fiction? Mm-hmm. What did he make up? And then there's the story of he might not have died when he was executed.
Which is talked about at the end of the documentary. So I'll let Rich finish his documentary.
Yes. But, there's that theory too, that he didn't die.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you want to know something that's funny? It might not be funny to you guys, but up until a few years ago, I didn't even know who this guy was. Here's how my mind works and how a lot of things, this is how my days go. I'll find it on TV somehow else, and I'll go, that's interesting. And then I look it up and I'm like, how did I not know anything about this? There was an episode of Supernatural. Anybody watch Supernatural?
Surprisingly, no. I have not.
Anyway, there's an episode in there that's based on the H.H. Holmes thing. And the whole episode it's his ghost back in Philadelphia where he was executed, haunting a building. I'm like, who is this guy? And they use his alias and his name, Mudgett, and all that stuff. So I looked him up, and then this is where I found all this stuff a couple of years back. I'm like, how did I never hear about this guy before? So.
But that's a lot of things. There's so many things out there that you don't know until you see a documentary or somebody randomly says something. And I do the same thing like you, Rich. I won't know about something and then something comes on TV and I'm like, huh. And then I'm sitting there Googling something and Scott's like, what are you doing? Why are you on your phone? I'm like, because I need to find out more.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
So I'm like looking everything up and then I'll be like, hey, by the way, he or she did this and they, they're doing this. And
how many times when you do that, you come across that it somehow intersects with something else that you knew about, know about, or heard, and you're like, what? How the hell does that work? It's like always, it's like, it's somehow it had something to do with in this place or that place that all of a sudden was associated with this person or that, and it's like,
well, what is that? Like the 7? How does that go? Like 7 people away from Kevin Bacon type
something
situation.
Like that.
I forgot what it's actually called.
I call it the Great Magnet is what I call it.
That's even better. Because it's all kind of all connected together where, you think that for us, we're in Southeast Wisconsin and we're not that far away from Chicago. we're, it's same with, we just did Ed Gein, and he's right in our state, but you don't think about these things. You're like, John Wayne Gacy, same thing. He's in Chicago. Everybody's talking about Dahmer now because Netflix has a thing about Dahmer. Dahmer's in Milwaukee. It's all connected in areas, and you're just like, that person was here and that person was there. And sometimes you sit there and go, well, I was there, but not at that time period, obviously, but I drove past this, and how did I not know about this? And then you're like, I went past this part here, I don't know, 20, 30 times, never thought anything of it. And just to find out that something significant happened in the past, which is interesting. But yeah, I like the magnet.
Great magnet. Everything somehow comes back to something else every time. It's like, I don't know how that works, but it always seems to work that way for me anyways, whenever something's going on.
Right.
But yeah, I mean that the Jack the Ripper thing is just the way the timeline and the dates, and I mean, I don't know. To me, it's interesting. I mean, it's my opinion, but I mean, he comes back, and how many times does he go to other, I think they had documentation or something that he did a lot of traveling back and forth to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got to figure, what are the odds that he did something in New York?
Right.
I mean, he's not going to change, obviously, probably. I mean, if he's doing it here and doing it all in these other locations he was at, I mean, what's to say he did something in New York that nobody knows about too?
Right.
So.
Well, didn't they find bones of the children? There was something about.
They said they found some that could be that 6-year-old girl or whatever they said they found.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the girl that Pearl, I think.
Pearl, yeah.
Yeah, they said that when they did find some bones of a child that could have been around 6 years old or whatever.
But he's moved around so much, how did we not know if there, like you said, there's bodies other places, a family farm, his
there's bodies other places.
Sure.
I don't doubt that.
Right.
We're never gonna know where they're at, but
no. Just
like underneath that post office or that parcel of land that the castle actually sat on, man, that's probably a treasure trove underneath there of bones and weapons or whatever, God knows what. That
right.
Back then they didn't have, they just had contracted people that did the cleaning up or were going through the crime scenes or whatever. So I mean, you don't know what was ever picked up out of there, or people just buried it. Well, out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
So.
Well, and it's funny because he's just, I don't know. He's got this almost veil over him. Like you don't know what's going to come next out of him. What part is going to reveal the truth. But they say that, like I said, he's charming, and family members would sit there and go, no, he was a good kid. He is a good guy. He was very personable. He cared about people. But yet, in the same token, they would sit there and like, well, he had these issues, and he would try to swindle us out of this. And, he's just, I don't even know. I can't put my finger on him. How did he get caught, Leah? Do you remember on how he?
He was finally caught shortly, or not shortly, but he did get caught when, after the business partner and the children, Alice and Nellie, had died. And he took off after Alice and Nellie, but he, I think, had his business partner's son with him for a little bit, Howard.
Yes.
Because Alice and Nellie were found in Toronto, while Howard was found in Indianapolis. I can never say that one.
Indianapolis?
Yeah, that one. So I think he had Howard with him. Somewhere in there, somebody caught on and found him because he was caught not long after that. And it was for the business partner.
Right. And he was captured in like, what was that? 1896 he was captured. 1895.
Yeah. Right, because he died in 1896.
It was November that he was captured. So he wasn't incarcerated very long. I mean, it seemed like it was a very fast trial and sentencing.
Yeah, he was caught in November and hung in May.
Yeah. Shortly, like 7 days short of his 35th birthday. He's not very old either. That's the other thing. So he did a lot of jumping around in a very short time.
But he had things to do. He was a man on a mission. He had things to get done.
Well, he went Illinois, Indiana, Ontario, Pennsylvania.
I think New York for a while.
Yeah, New York.
London.
Minnesota, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where he met his second wife.
Right.
I think his third wife was in Denver.
Yes.
So he made himself all the way up to Colorado.
Area. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but, he kept marrying these women.
And apparently in London.
Yeah. Well, and then the kids lived, his son and daughter, because he had a son with the first wife.
Daughter with the second. Yeah.
And then the son, I'm trying to think. They said what he did.
He was a city mayor,
he was a mayor.
Mayor, and then the daughter was the teacher.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
I don't remember where the daughter was teaching, but I know the son ended up in Florida.
Yep.
Yes.
Orlando.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So I mean, they lived prominent lives, and they obviously kept. Well, he ended up keeping his father's last name.
Do we know the great grandson, the one that did the documentary and stuff, which line he came from? Was he down the line of the son or the daughter?
Son. He said his grandfather's grandfather was Holmes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the family farm is still around because Holmes ended up inheriting a small piece of land.
You're talking about in Connecticut or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah.
Connecticut or New Hampshire. One of the
New Hampshire. Sorry. Yep. Yep. That's
somewhere in New England. Yeah.
Yep.
But he ended up getting a small piece of land and he kept it for a while there. Try to be that family guy and run, the normal life, but it just never suited him. He could not.
I wonder if it just came down to money, because it said that his family was affluent, like they were well to do, even though they had their issues.
Mm-hmm.
If maybe money was important and doing your day to day, he wasn't getting enough, because he was always after more money.
Seems like it
was a motivation for him.
Right. And they don't really talk too much about his siblings, but it seemed like he was always trying to get the attention. I mean, he's got 5 kids in the family. He's got an older brother, older sister, and then the younger brother, and I think another sister. But, is he just trying to keep up with the Joneses and, in this case, his siblings? Were they, doing pretty well in life, and then mom and dad are just sitting there going, well, you're super smart. Why do you keep messing up? Why can't you keep a job? And why can't you keep a family? And it seemed like he could never do anything right. He'd always try to figure out a different angle for something to, make more money. But then, like I said, it doesn't seem like it's about the money though. Like he wasn't doing, besides owning the drugstore and building the castle, it didn't seem like he was like living high off the hog, you know. He just seemed to be like just an everyday person, if that makes any sense. I mean,
I kind of feel like the money was a bigger motivator for him. I mean, I don't know what $10,000 was in the 1800s, what it would be compared to now, but I mean, he was willing to kill his business partner, somebody who he'd known for a long time, over 10 grand. So,
right.
But what was he doing with the money, though?
Well, I mean, he traveled everywhere.
Right. But then somebody would go missing, and then he'd go pack up his bags to the next city.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't seem like he was living in, upper class. He was more like middle class living, even with his travels. I mean, it didn't seem like the money wasn't, it was there, but it wasn't there. It was like it was gone. So was he living out of his means? Maybe. I don't know. I know that the castle, he never finished the third floor. He never paid his bills. So, I mean.
Yeah, right.
He obviously had some money because he's not paying the bills. And, he had the lawsuits, but they never got anything out of him. So where did all the money go?
Attracting his next female.
Yeah. But afterwards, I don't remember, what happened to the families? Did they get any money back for their losses? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I never really looked up like the victims or their families and like their stories, which would be interesting to kind of figure out and learn more about his siblings. And if there's anything out there about like what they felt about him.
Right. We might have to look into that a little bit deeper and see. Because it had to have some kind of effect. Because, I mean, you don't live through something like that and your name is attached and it's your brother or your father or your husband and not get affected by that.
Right.
And I know, in the documentary, the great-great-grandson is trying to find out more about the family and stuff like that. But, has it really affected? I mean, it's made money for him in this documentary, obviously.
Sure. Right.
There's all these books out there about his great-great-grandfather. And I'm sure he's got a book out there now with the documentary.
A TV series coming out 2023 with Keanu Reeves and Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's directed by, I think, Scorsese. And it's supposed to be an 8-part series, so I'm interested in watching that. And it's based off of the book Devil in a White City.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in watching that, but we got another one coming up.
I'll watch it too. So
you got to finish this one first, mister.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
This way we can talk about the rest of it.
Yeah.
But
it was a good documentary. I really enjoyed watching
it. Yeah, it was hard to turn it off when I had to go to bed that night. But it was interesting.
Yep.
So, well, at least you get to watch it. Like, if you want to binge watch it, when it came out on TV, I had to wait till the next week. So you at least can binge watch it.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. I don't know how many episodes in I am, but it's got to be at least 4, maybe 5. I don't remember. But
so it's funny, you can watch like 9 hours of a series, but you can't watch like 3-hour movies without falling asleep.
I can. I can.
I think we kind of hit everything that we could on Holmes.
For now, yeah.
At least for now, yeah. I think we can come back and revisit some things and find out a little bit more about his family and the victims and see what kind of effect that's had on them. And maybe we'll have to travel down to Chicago.
That would be so cool.
Take a little gander at the lot. I mean, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump away from where we are.
Makes you wonder if there was any footprints of him here in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
You know, I thought on that documentary they were showing I have to watch the episode again, but it showed like a map of his locations or where they had documentation or trails of where he was. And there was something in Wisconsin, if I remember right, when it showed where he was going across different parts of the country. And I could swear there was a red line going up into Wisconsin somewhere, but I don't think it was Milwaukee. It looked like it might have been further.
Well, this is all the time we have for this episode, and we hope you enjoyed it. We'd love to hear from you and what you thought of this episode and other episodes as well. If there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, please email us at soupit@gmail.com. That's SEWPIT@gmail.com. Until next week, for our believers, keep believing. And for our skeptics, continue to keep us grounded. I'm Kathy. Thank you for listening to another episode of Wicked Darkness.